Good day, everybody. Welcome back to Sword Wolf Forge. Today, we're ready to put our handle scales on our knife. And it's a very important step in the process. It can be super complicated or super easy. It all depends on how you approach it. Today, I'm going to go over some different tips and tricks that I've figured out because of all my mess ups, it probably the most came from putting on handle scales, either putting them on backwards, pins don't fit right, you name it, I've done it. And I've come up with a method that I wouldn't say is foolproof, but it really makes things a lot more simple. Now, when we're dealing with the handle scales, you can slap about anything known to man onto a knife. I mean, it ranges from like mammoth tooth to ivory. I mean, stuff in the thousands of dollars, all the way down to something simple like a piece of walnut. Normally, though, you can buy even scales online or you can purchase them. They're usually about 1.5 inches tall, 5 inches wide, and normally about 1/4 inch thick. So you can keep that in mind. Biggest advice right now, starting out. If you're just starting out, keep it simple. Okay? This is your first knife or maybe the first couple knives. Put on something that's very economical and something that you can start learning how to do this, instead, because I've done it before. I've spent $50 on a pair of handle scales and I split them or didn't glue them up right, and now that's wasted money. So learn, the easy way. So what I've done is I've just taken a little bit of walnut that I've got walnut laying around here in the shop. It grows around here. It looks beautiful. It's a good hardwood, and so I'm going to be using that today. Okay, so over to the bench and let's get started. Okay, before we start cutting, gluing, or anything, it's really important that we make sure that our mating surfaces are going to be flat. Okay, so what I want to do is I've laid my blade on this piece of marble. I'm looking for any kind of daylight, and Susie's out here helping me. And I don't see any daylight, so this is pretty flat. Now, if I saw anything, you just want to take it to your grinder or file it down and look for any high spots. But we want this as flat as possible, so we have no gaps when we glue on our handle scales. Now, we're also going to want to do this with our handle scales themselves. I'm going to show you how I ensure that these are flat here in a second. Okay, to make sure that our handle scales are flat, what I've done is I've taken my piece of marble, which is flat, and I've taken some of my trusty roll of 220 sandpaper, stretched it across. And what we want to do is we want to place even pressure on both sides of our scales and kind of do a figure 8 on the sandpaper. Nice even pressure. And then kind of check it. And if you have to, you can put some little marks in there to make sure you're getting everything. But just do this for a little bit, and this will make sure that it's nice and flat. Okay, so that's about done. So what I want to do is I want to make sure, you don't have to do both sides because the other side you're going to be, contouring everything to the handle. But this side is going to be the side that's mating up with the tang. So I might just put a little X or something here so I know what side I've done. And then we'll do the other scale. Do a little bit more. Okay, now looks pretty good. Okay, so now that I've verified these are flat, now it's time to start prepping on how we want to mate it to our tang. And again, I do it step by step because it's easy to get these things messed up, turned around, and everything else. So, and there's a lot of different ways that guys do this. I'm not saying that my way is only the right way or their way is wrong, but this is the method that I've developed over time of doing this, and it seems to work pretty darn well. So I'm going to get everything set up, and more work, less talk. Now, how I do things with my scales is I focus on one side at a time. Now, I have seen some guys that will stack their scales on one side and then drill down and take care of both scales at the same time. And that works as if you are 100% straight up and down. But if you're at even a slight angle, which is very easy to do, when you put the scale on the other side, it won't fit right. When you try to pin it, the pin just won't go through. So what I like to do is just focus. It's a little bit more time consuming, but it saves you a lot of headache in the long run. Is I just focus on one side at a time. So what I do is I lay my tang on the scale about where I want it, and I get some electrical tape. And then I wrap the tape around the tang and the scale, and I do it over the other hole as well. And I do this to the tapes for several different reasons. One is I don't want this shifting. I don't want the scale or the tang shifting on me when I'm drilling. So this holds it all in place. And also, when I'm drilling, on some woods, when you drill on the other side, you'll have a big blowout. This tape helps preventing that. So now I'm going to take you over the drill press. We'll drill this out. Okay, as you remember, we drilled the holes in the tang a couple videos earlier that were 3/16. And so now I've got a 3/16 drill bit all chucked up, and we're ready to drill out our first handle scale. And I do it a little bit at a time. Nope, not pressure, not forcing anything. And there you go. Next step. Okay, for today's project, I'm going to be using 3/16 black G10 rod for my pin material. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of pin materials out there as well. Most popular G10, brass, and stainless steel. It all depends on your aesthetics, okay? Um, and you can find this stuff at pretty much any bladesmith or knife making shop. I've even found some brass rod at Hobby Lobby, Tractor Supply. You can find that. But again, those are the most common. There are other ways of pinning material like Corby bolts and all kinds of stuff. This is probably the most simple method though. And you don't, if you're going to use steel, use stainless steel, because if you use mild steel or something like that, it'll rust on you. It'll look terrible. But what I want to do now is I want to cut my pins, and I'm going to cut them long. I'm probably going to cut them about 2 inches. because I'm going to utilize these for all my lineup, where to cut and everything like that before I actually do glue up. So let's cut a couple pins real quick. Now there's going to be some burrs around here. So what you want to do is, I'm going to take this over to my grinder real quick, and I'm actually going to chamfer both ends. And that'll be a lot, and make it a lot easier to slide through, because depending on the materials you're using, sometimes these are a little bit too big, sometimes they're a little bit too small, whatever. But sometimes these can fight you a little bit. So I'm going to chamfer both ends so it just helps it, insert into the tang and the wood a lot easier. Next step, let's get the tape off. And we're going to see how well our pins fit. First, all right, fits pretty easy through the tang, which is awesomeness. We got a lot of resistance in here. So I like to leave these, I like to get these where they're kind of loose. You don't have to really finagle with them that much, and I'm going to show you how to take care of that. You might be asking, why do you want these fairly loose? Well, you're not really getting the mechanical connection with the pins. You're going to be getting the mechanical connection with the epoxy. And the stuff that I'm going to suggest and the stuff out there today is strong. Okay? But what this does is the pins keep the scales from shifting and breaking that epoxy loose. And it adds aesthetics as well. But it really does not hold the scale to the tang. So I'm going to go over and show you a little trick that I picked up, a couple tricks actually, that I picked up to help these fit just a little bit easier. So when we assemble everything, we're not trying to jam things together, things are breaking and stuff like that. Because you do want these to fit, kind of loose, because if you start hammering these, try to hammer these through, you're going to split your wood. And then you're starting all over again. So again, going to show you a couple tips that I picked up to help prevent that. Okay, so what I've got here is a 3/16. It's called a reamer. And what we're going to do is we're going to get this all tightened up. And we're going to run it through these holes a little bit. See if we can clean them out a little bit. All right, let's check our pins. They're getting there. They're not too bad, but I want to show you another trick real quick. If for some reason it's still not going through, and G10's not too bad, but I've run into it with stainless steel. They can be, you get like oxides on them and stuff, and they just don't want to cooperate when you're trying to get these through, because again, you don't want to force these through. So what you can do this with a drill press, or you can even do this with a little handheld drill. But I just chuck these up. They don't have to be super tight. get a piece of sandpaper and just lightly just smooth everything out. Turn it around. We'll check our fit. That's a lot better. See it went right through there. Now you could do that several times. Just you don't want these too loose, okay? Because then you're going to see a gap when you glue everything up. But you want to be able to work with these. You need to be able to move them and stuff. So this is pretty satisfactory now. Boom. Let's go back over the work table. I'm going to show you the next step. Okay, now we got our pins fitting a lot better. My next step is I want to just lightly pin my scale to my tang. So I've got line up, okay? It's not going to move. I'm going to take a Sharpie, a fine one, if anyone will work. But I want to trace the outline of my tang into this walnut. And there you go. Now, this is a critical thing to do. I did all this on the right side of my tang. Put a big R on this scale. So I remember, one, this is the inside because I've got the R there and it goes on the right. Okay, because you're going to do this for the left side. I'm not going to show it on video. You see all the steps for this side, and if you miss something, you can always rewind. But this is very crucial that you mark what side is what, okay? Especially when you do glue up. Because, again, you might not have been perfect with that drill bit. Things might have been just a little bit off, so I custom made this for the right side. Okay, so I'm going to turn the camera off. I'm going to get a little bit of coffee, and I'll do the left side. And when I come back, I'll have both sides traced out and ready to go, and we're going to take them over and cut these out. Okay, as you can see, I've got the other side finished now, and now I'm ready. I want to cut these out. This isn't a necessary step if you don't have the proper tools, but it makes it a lot easier since you don't have to grind this whole profile out when it's attached to the knife. So I like to cut these out. I'm going to take you over to my bandsaw, show you how I cut them out, and then there's one more step before we want to glue these onto our tang. So over to the bandsaw. When I first started out, I had to cut these out with a jigsaw. That was pretty scary. You could do it with a coping saw if you don't have a bandsaw. But a bandsaw makes this so much easier. And, you know, I have an old bandsaw. I actually think they're safer because they don't run at like hyper velocity RPMs like some of these do today. But you still want to be careful. Also focus on, I like to stay on the outside of this black line, not the inside. I mean, if you get too close in there, you can still correct it when we profile, but I like to leave just a little bit of wood left, so there's room for air. So let's go ahead and cut these out. I guess the most important thing is it plugged in? There you have it. I'm going to turn the camera off. I'll do the other side. We'll get back to the workbench. Okay, so this is going to be a very crucial tip or trick that I've learned the hard way before. This area right here is not finished. And it's a lot easier to profile this, to clean it up, and to get these to match before you put them on the tang. A lot easier. So what I like to do, I got my right one, I got my left one. So I like to put them how they are going to correspond on the tang. I pin them together. So they are aligned. That one's being a little stubborn, but we'll get her. There. Be fun taking them apart, but I'll get it. Now what I want to do is I want to kind of line this up. And this doesn't have to be super exact. I want to get an idea how this is going to be on the knife. And what I'll do is I'll kind of just, because you don't want to cover up your maker's mark if you've got one. And I like to kind of do this at a little bit of a, curve, because I don't like the look of it just being straight. But you can do it any way you want. But the biggest thing is do it now, because once you get it on the knife, it's going to be hard to get these lined up and everything, and you'll see it more once I cut these out. I'm going to take this over to the bandsaw, cut them out, and then I'll show you how it fits. And then if you have to make any adjustments, you just repeat it. But right now is the time to do this, because I see guys, they don't do that. And you'll see a bunch of scratches right here, because they didn't profile that, they didn't clean it up until they had these glued on the knife. And then there's a bunch of scratch marks all over the place. So you spend a lot of time putting your nice hand rub finish on here, and you're going to mess it all up if you don't do this step. So you've already seen me on the bandsaw. I'm going to go over there and cut this, and then see how it fits on the tang. And then we'll be ready for glue up. Okay, so I got the end cut out. I also took the opportunity to kind of clean this up a little bit from the saw blade, scarring it up. Ran it a little bit on the belt sander, and then I went back with some 400 grit and then 600 grit to clean all this up. So now let's see how they line up on the knife. I can see my maker's mark just fine. Everything's nice and lined up. So we're ready to glue. So let me get the table all set up for gluing. We'll get her done. Okay, so we are ready to prep and glue up. Now there's a couple tips and tricks in here that I'm going to tell you about, or things that hi Susie, things that I've learned here as well. Because like when I teach, a lot of students get kind of nervous and everything like that. And if you've been following this method so far, it's going to go together real easy. Now, for you beginners, or if this is your first knife, okay, first thing is I'm going to be using West Systems 2-part epoxy. Okay, now they make a 5-minute epoxy and they make a 24-hour epoxy. For this class I'm using, or this video I'm using 5-minute epoxy, but I'm going to tell you right now, if you're beginning, do yourself a huge favor and use the 24-hour epoxy, because it just gives you a lot more time. If you mess up, you've got time to correct it. With 5-minute epoxy, actually I call it about 7.5-minute epoxy. Depends on the temperature, humidity, and everything, how long it takes to set up. But it doesn't give you a lot of time. Okay? So beginning, use the 24-hour epoxy. Let it set overnight. It just gives you a lot more time and you're not stressing out. But again, I use West Systems. I personally think it's the best epoxy out there. I'll put a link to it in the description for you. But that's about the only epoxy that I use. Now, first thing I want to do is I want to clean off all my surfaces with acetone. So I got some acetone and I want to just clean up all those mating surfaces. Because you remember I put some of that wax on this blade to protect it from rusting. Well, I don't want that interfering with my adhesion with my epoxy. And then we'll just kind of lightly rub down these scales. But again, remember, left and right. Another key thing when you're doing this, big key thing, make sure that your work area is clean. No tools anywhere, anything like that, because you're going to be fumbling around trying to find stuff at first until you do this a couple times. Once you do this a couple times, it goes smooth. You know, I can put on a pair of handle scales in 15 minutes, but that took a lot of time. But again, sanitary area, I've got plenty of room now to do what I have to do. So now I'm ready to mix up my epoxy. You put 2 equal amounts, and you can mix this in anything you want. Now the 24 hours color different, so it comes out like an orange color when it's wet. Mix it up real good. Okay, now we've got 5 minutes. Now if you noticed, I've already got my pins in one of the scales. It's ready to go. So you don't have to glob this on, because I'm going to tell you, if you put too much on, when you clamp this down, it's going to squirt everywhere. But you want just a nice amount, even coverage, a little bit on the pins. And now I can line, because I've got them pins in there, I can line it right up. Boom. And sometimes it's nice to have a little hammer. You can just tap, 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 just a little bit to get them started on the other side. All right. So now I'm ready to do my right scale. A little bit of epoxy. Again, you don't want epoxy going everywhere. I mean, you're gonna make a little bit of a mess, but I'm gonna show you the places to watch for, really. All right. Line them up with the pins. Boom. A little bit of a tap. You see, I'm not using, I mean, this is a small hammer. I'm not using a lot of force. Make sure the pins are coming out the other side. I've done that before where, oh, you know, when paying attention, the pin ain't coming out on the other side. Well, now you got a problem. Last step, I use about 3 clamps. And you want nice solid pressure, but you don't want to crank on these. You could split the wood. Uno. I stagger them. Dos. And trace. Now, I told you about the glue pushing out. The only place you really want to be careful of is right up here by your ricasso. So now's the time to address that, because you've got to get some glue popping out. Get a little bit of acetone, not a lot. You don't want to, you know, it gushed back down into the seam. But if you can maybe see there's just a little bit of epoxy there. Now's the time to clean that up. So I'm going to take my rag with the acetone and try to get as much of that, because if that hardens, it's not as easy to get it off. You end up leaving scratch marks and all kinds of stuff. So, you know, again, we're looking for attention to detail here. And set yourself up for success, not failure, or added steps that you need to take. Also check the blade. You might have gooped a little bit on the blade. Now's the time to maybe clean that off a little bit. As you can see, I've got glue popping out everywhere here. Well, we're going to be cleaning all this up on the grinder, or with a rasp or something, but we're going to be profiling all of that. So I'm not worried about that. I'm just worried about right here and here. Just getting any of that residual glue that popped out. And so we're good to go. So now I'm just going to let this sit. If you're using 24-hour epoxy, normally I'll just let it sit overnight and come back the next day in the afternoon or something and work on it. This is, again, my 7.5 minute epoxy. So I'm going to turn the camera off, enjoy a cup of coffee, and we will adjourn when this is all set up. So it's been about a half hour or so. I think our epoxy's set up pretty good. So let's take our clamps off. Okay, so we're going to break this down into two new steps. First thing we want to do is profile. Kind of like we profiled the blade, we want to profile the handle now. We want to take all this excess wood down to the steel. You notice we didn't even clean this part up because we're going to be grinding and making all this even. Another thing you can do, if these are too far out, you can take that over, and sometimes I'll cut them off. Because this is G10, you don't have to worry about these getting overheated that much when you're grinding on a grinder. But if they're stainless, you got to be really careful, because what you can actually do is you can get the pins so hot they'll actually burn the wood. So you'll see like a stainless steel pin with a big black ring around it. And it can also burn out the glue a little bit. So you want to be careful, but I'll show you some of that when we're on the grinder. Now, some people, and I suggest doing this when you're starting out, will cover their blade with some painter's tape or something just to kind of protect the finish while we're doing this next step. I sometimes do it, sometimes I don't. Sometimes I feel like the painter's tape gets in the way. And also it's hard to see right here because we're going to be scratching this up. But once we get done profiling, we'll go back with a different grid on the belt sander to kind of take some scratches out, because we're going to be using an aggressive belt to be removing this wood fairly quickly. But we'll be able to clean all that up, and in here, that'll be one of our final steps. So I'm going to get the 2x72 all set up for this, and we'll get started. I forgot something. Before we start grinding, you want to wear some kind of breathing apparatus, whether it be just a mask or a respirator or something, because now wood doesn't do very good in the lungs, but some of these composite materials, like if you're using G10 for your handles or stabilized wood or anything, this kicks up a lot of dust and you're going to be breathing that crap in and bad things happen. So wear some kind of protection for your lungs. Okay, because I'm going to be wearing a respirator, I'm going to just kind of walk you through what I'm going to be doing. First part, going to be focusing on just cleaning this side up, trying to get as much of this as I can. I might have to get my small wheel attachment to get in here, but I don't think I'm going to have to. But all I'm going to do right now is just profile. Get this all nice and even. And then we'll move on. And like a big idiot, I turned the camera off instead of turning the grinder off. But pretty much got everything cleaned up. Pardon the lighting. I'm going to use my small wheel to just clean this area up a little bit. If you notice, one is I'm going on a low speed. Now, you may not have a variable speed on your grinder, but the lower the speed, the better. I'm using a 36 grit belt, and you can see it made everything nice and even pretty quick. The other thing you want to make sure of is that you are nice and even when you're contacting the belt. You don't want to be off at an angle or something like that because it's going to look goofy and you'll have to clean all that up. So try to be nice and square on that belt. And if you notice too, again, the belt's not going very fast and I'm not using a lot of pressure because unlike steel, this wood is real soft and you can burn it real easy. So just nice and be careful. As you can see, it doesn't take super long to do. I'm going to go ahead and do the small wheel attachment, clean this up in here, and then we'll proceed. Okay. Another thing you notice too, you can tell when your wood's even with the steel because sparks start coming out. So when you see that, then you know that you're down to evenness and you can progress to another area. So what I want to do now is, because I've got all these scratches in here, I want to progress to a finer belt and just clean up my steel a little bit before I start doing the contouring. I just want to focus on, again, my profile, get that cleaned up a little bit. And so I'm going to progress to a different belt real quick. I think I want to use an A300 Trizac belt. And this step right here is mainly just to clean up the steel, not the wood. But I want to get all them deep scratches out of there. Focus on right here in the spine. And last, I'm going to run a conditioning belt real quick. There's a couple little scratches in there. I'm going to do that off camera. But we're pretty much ready now to hit the flats and to start profiling this or contouring it to our hand. So again, I'm going to finish this up off camera, and then when I come back, now we're going to start shaping the handle. Okay? Okay, I got everything cleaned up, and now we're ready to start contouring. Especially when you are beginning, I usually eyeball this and then go back and I'll check it as I go. But especially when you're starting out, it doesn't hurt to draw you out a couple guidelines so you can measure like off your spine. Let's say I want to take this a little bit more than 1/8 of an inch. And normally what I'll do is I will flare the back. The back will be thicker than the front, so it's going to flare out a little bit. So let's just say in the back I want to go 1/4 of an inch. So then, because this is a little bit uneven, see if I can do this. I'll just use a straight edge. Doesn't have to be exact. But it kind of gives me a reference to how far I want to grind this off. Let's try this a different way. It's not easy with a camera in front of you. That messed up a little bit. And you don't have to take it all the way. You can use these reference lines. Because what we're going to do is, we did this plane first. Got this all nice and even. Now we want to clean this up and get this and profile this side and this side. And then what we'll do then is we'll start hitting the angles. But you're going to have 1 dimension, 2 dimensions, and then we will take on the contouring after we get this. But you can make this as wide as you want. I kind of exaggerate. I think I need to make that a little bit thicker. But this just kind of gives you some reference lines. So go over to the grinder again. Now we'll hit the sides here. Okay, so I went back and cleaned up my lines a little bit. And again, this is just a suggestion. You don't have to do this, but this helps you get it more even. So we're going to go ahead and do the sides of our handle now. Get it to where we want it. And then we will continue on shaping. Again, make sure you're not overheating your pins. So even though I don't have these all nice and rounded off, I want to check the fit. How does it fit? I'm not completely to my lines. Again, you can just use that as a reference, but you can see it's pretty even. And make sure, again, it's nice and straight up and down. You don't want to be like this, or you're going to have a very thin top and a very fat bottom. Fat bottom girls, right? But that's not good on a knife. But this is about the thickness now that I feel I want to work with to do my contouring. What's nice about this is, again, you get to custom shape this to your hand. You know, you go to Cabela's, any outdoor store, Walmart, whatever, it's a one-size-fits-all knife. Well, that's not the case here. You get to contour this and conform this to your hand. Okay, so up till now we've been pretty dimensional. We've been either focusing on this side or this side. So now we want to actually start contouring it to our hand. And there's several different ways you can do this, depending on the equipment you have. You can put this in a vise. Make sure you protect the blade with either some more tape or leather. And you can use a rasp to round off these edges if you'd like to do it that way, or equipment-wise. That's how I started out. Just start rounding these off and then, fit, see how it feels, continue to round them off. And this is a simple knife design, but when you start getting into finger wells and such, it can get a lot more complicated. But right now, again, keep it simple. You'll get to the point where you can do finger wells and stuff. But again, I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. Set yourself up for success, not failures. Another thing you can do is if you have a router, and you got to be really careful because these things will really hurt you. But you can router the edges if you like. And I do some knives like that on simple handles. And it comes out pretty nice. But again, it can be super dangerous. So if you're going to do the route, just be careful. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go back to the belt grinder. And what I like to do is just start putting on just like a 45-degree angle all the way around, and then it's almost like sculpting. You start taking off a little bit more here, fit it. And you'll see me doing that. I'll see how it feels. And again, this is just rough sculpting. What we'll do is, after we get all this profile, doesn't have to be perfect, then we will clean everything up with some sandpaper. So we're almost done. Trust me. There's a lot of steps into making a nice knife handle. Again, so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing this at an angle about 45 degrees, and I'm going to start contouring this so we got a nice, comfortable handle. Just a little bit at a time. And normally on the top I have a steeper angle than the bottom. But when you look at it, it's going to look like a teardrop almost. A little bit fatter on the top, thinner on the bottom. Feel it? And you kind of use your pins as a guide. See, I brought it up almost to that pin on this side, so I want to do the same thing on this side. Get it nice and even. Check it. And that's all we really have to do. Now, we're going to get some sandpaper, clean it all up. 220 sandpaper will really clean this up real nice. Then we'll maybe progress to, 4, maybe 600. It all depends on the finish you want. Okay, so I got my trusty roll of 220. And I'm just going to cut off just a little piece right now. So now, as you can see, there's still some flats in there and everything. It's kind of rough, but with this 220, it'll smooth everything out. And we also want to hit the steel too, kind of get some of them scratches out. As you can already see, it's starting to just round everything out, nice and smooth now. So kind of also consider this as a part of the sculpting. This isn't really the finishing yet, but we're just smoothing all those out. And we're also getting some of the belt marks that we left in the wood. You want to get all those out, especially if you're using like brass pins or something like that. It will leave some pretty nasty scratch marks in there. And so you kind of want to focus on getting all those sanded out too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, off camera, I'm going to keep on doing my 220 till you might be able to see, it's hard to see. See those scratch marks? I want to get all those out of there. Same thing like when we were hand sanding the blade. I want to get all these scratch marks out. And that'll take a little bit of time. But this 220, I mean, this is wood. It's a lot softer than steel. Doesn't take as long. But it's really important to get those out because it just, you got a nice wood handle. And you look at, so you can see them real good there now. And you got all these scratch marks in it. So let's just take a little bit of time to, attention to detail and quality and get all those out of there. It won't take super long. And again, if you want, you can turn on your favorite TV show or something while you're doing this. It makes the time go by faster. But again, I'll do this off camera, come back, and then we'll proceed to the next step. We're almost finished. Okay, everybody, I spent about 20 minutes with the 220, just cleaning everything up, getting as many scratches out as I could. Just like when we were hand sanding a blade, though, it's like every time you look at it in a different angle, you see another scratch. So just keep on going. You're going to get those out. But everything's nice and contoured now, nice and smooth. Another trick that I like to do is I like to clean everything up or wipe everything down with a little bit of acetone. And what that does is it cleans all the pores out, all that sanding dust and everything. But also it kind of highlights any imperfections you might have in the wood. Like if there's a scratch or something like that, you can kind of highlight it a little bit. And the nice thing about acetone is it it evaporates very quickly. Also, when you take the tape off the blade, acetone works really well with getting any film or glue off the blade. So you can go over the whole thing really with some little bit of acetone, kind of see where you need to hit a little bit more. But now I'm ready to progress. I'm going to progress with 400 grit. Just, again, cut off a couple squares, and I'm just going to smooth everything out just a little bit more. I mean, I've got everything pretty smooth, but now I just want to get a nicer finish on there and smooth everything out. And also blend in, getting them scratch marks off, especially on the spine. And as you remember, we finished off with 400 grit on our blade. So you don't want to see any transition right here. You got to be careful. You don't want like a wall up in there, or you can see a difference in the sanding. So that's a place that you want to pay attention to. Also in the finger groove, right here is a place you might want to focus on. So again, we're almost complete. I'm going to shut off the camera. Again, I'm going to do this off camera. You already know how to hand sand. But again, just get everything nice and smooth. Get any other scratch marks out that you can. And then we're going to be ready to put a little bit of a finish. I'm going to show you how to simply finish this, and we'll be done for the video. Okay, I finished hand sanding with the 400 grit on the handle. And I cleaned everything up again with some acetone. Just again, get some of that dust out of the pores and everything like that. Also, it helps highlight any kind of scratches. So now what I want to do, I'm going to stop at 400 grit. And if you want, you can continue on to any grit you want. What kind of finish you want. You can even put this on a buffer if you like. But I'm happy with where I'm at here with the 400 grit. So now we want to protect the wood. We want to protect it. We want to condition it. We don't want it to dry up, to warp, to crack, and put a nice little sheen on it. So with a simple project like this, what I want to do is just use tung oil. And I'm not going to go through all the process. I'm just going to tell you what to do. Normally what you want to do when you're using tung oil is have like a jar and just submerge it, the handle in there. And normally what I'll do for the first step is just leave it in there overnight. Let it really soak in, get into the pores and everything like that. And after overnight, pull it out. And then wipe off all the excess. And you want to get all the oil off your blade. If you don't, it leaves this real nasty film that is just a bear to remove. So clean off all your excess. And then what I'll do is I'll wipe off the blade, get any of that residual oil off the blade before it dries with some acetone. So you don't get that, it's like a cloudy film that it leaves. And then what you do is you just let it dry. And then you can dip it again if you like. Or you can just go over it with more layers of the tung oil. And look at how pretty look at that grain popping. And that's just walnut. It's a beautiful wood. It's sturdy. I mean, they used to make, musket stocks out of this stuff. It's tough. I love the grain structure of it. And you can find this you know, if you got a lumber mill near you, another place that you can find this is like a furniture maker or a woodworker. Ask them for cutoffs. As you can see, you don't need a lot of material to make a handle. See if they've got some cutoffs that you can have. And so it's already nice and cut up and everything dried. But going back to this, just keep on applying layers until you're satisfied with the finish. And that will protect the wood. And again, give you a nice, clean look. And that's all you need to do. We're finished with the handles. A simple design, simple process. Again, you can make this as complicated as you want, but when you're starting out, keep it simple. Okay, that's going to wrap things up for the day. We have a nice, beautiful walnut handle on our knife now. Again, a lot of information thrown at you, but if you notice, I like to focus on where I've messed up, where I've made mistakes, and how to correct them. I mean, you don't need a whole video on just sanding the whole time. I just like to focus on, again, where to look at, make things even and everything like that. But there we go. We're almost finished. This still isn't a knife yet. I can't cut anything with it. So our last video in this whole 101 series is going to be on sharpening. Okay, I've wasted a lot of money on sharpening. So in the next video, I'm going to show you how I sharpen a knife, and then we will be complete. So I'm really looking forward to seeing you the next time. Thank you for sharing your time with me, and stay sharp, everybody.